Well, let's get into the groove. Before we tell you all the things about budget, let's apprise you of the latest news roundup. Now, only half of the total 275 members of parliament will be admitted into the chamber today when the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, delivers the mid-year budget statement. Now, the rest of the MPs would have to monitor proceedings on their televisions in their offices or sit in the public gallery if they want. Now, the Speaker of Parliament, Professor Michael Quay, announced that as part of measures to ensure social distancing to avoid spread of coronavirus, MPs will sit an extra seat apart.
Honourable members of Parliament may note that there will be free sitting in the chamber. All name tags will be removed for tomorrow. Members may only sit on alternative seats, such that there will be an empty seat between every two members seated. Honourable members who are unable to find seats may monitor the presentation in their offices. Alternatively, such members could be seated at the public gallery, where no others will be admitted to follow proceedings. 3. The general public is by this informed that regarding tomorrow's sitting, the protocol that debars all visitors to Parliament and especially to parliamentary sittings remains in force. To that end, the public gallery will not be open to members of the public. No members of the public will be entitled to attend Parliament tomorrow. 4. The program will be aired on both state and private media, and the general public may follow proceedings from the comfort of their homes and offices. The Public Affairs Department are to ensure that the program is aired live for the benefit of all Ghanaians. 5. The Director of the Public Affairs and the Dean of the Press Corps are also directed to ensure that there is social distancing at the press gallery, where only limited members of the media will be admitted, the usual parliamentary press corps. Others are to please get their information from them and stay away from this house. It is useful to state that having regard to a limited space available, media personnel other than those identified as members of the parliamentary press corps will not be admitted into the house. Other media persons may obtain their information from the parliamentary press corps or from live broadcasts. The Marshal is accordingly directed to ensure full compliance. To emphasize, no crowd will be allowed outside the chamber area. Members should please refrain from moving about the chamber, touching other chairs and tables and going to sit next to others. Social distancing is imperative.
And we're expecting to be in the house at 10, but before then, all the previews will be right here with some great discussions interspersing all these. But let's move on. In Ashanti, about 218 people died in road crashes in the Ashanti region in the first half of this year. Now, is just two below the figure for 2019. Police Motor Traffic and Transport Department says 1,413 road crashes occurred during the period. Regional Commander Superintendent Emmanuel Edubwahin spoke at the opening of a new vehicle testing and licensing company in the capital, Kumasi. Lava FM's Kwesi Debra has more in this report.
Road accidents have been on the surge over the past decade. According to the National Road Safety Commission, vehicles involved in road accidents still hovers over 1,000. Superintendent Edubwahin blamed the situation on carelessness and indiscipline on the roads.
So far, it is the 7th, but I still have to mention. From January to June 2020, as compared to the same period 2019, we have recorded 1,413 accident cases within Ashanti region alone, as compared to 1,654 in 2019. Here we have a reduction of about 50%. Total number of vehicles involved, unfortunately, increased from 1,338 last year to 2,293. Total number of persons who have sustained in different degree of injuries, 1,738, as compared to 2,077 last year. Again, the unfortunate situation is that with all these COVID-19, the lockdowns, where there was reduction of number of vehicles on our roads, the total number of people who have died through road crashes in the Southern region is 218, as against 216 for the same period last year. Unfortunately, the men are dying more than the women. We have 117 men and then 41 female.
Sadumak Prime Company Limited is mandated by the Driver and Vehicle Licensing Authority under the Road and Traffic Regulation to undertake vehicle testing and issuance of roadworthy certificate. According to the DVLA, it's meant to make the private vehicle testing the sole issue of renewal roadworthy certificate. Regional Manager of DVLA, Amos Abeka, says it will go a long way to reduce road accidents in the country.
The DVLA decided at a point that the congestion in our offices is too much. The frustration people go through is too much. And so in order to ease these things, there's a need to open up. And that is why we are here. And it's our aim, a hope and objective is that these things, people patronize it. If you want to go into the statistics, my big brother has done that already. The accidents and what it does was the number of people, and most of it is as a result of lack of maintenance.
Reporting for Joy News, Kwesi Debra.
A second-year student of the Ejiso Technical Senior High School has been hospitalized after drinking liquid soap in what is believed to be an attempted suicide on campus. Now, this was after an assistant headmaster of the school locked him up with a colleague overnight in his office for stealing the school's electric stabilizer. Shouts by the colleague from inside the offices attracted attention of staff and students who found the victim foaming from the mouth. Lava Firm's Erastus Saridonko has been following the story and brings us the latest.
According to school authorities, a taxi driver spotted the two students in the evening yesterday trying to scale over the school wall with a hidden item. He arrested and handed them over to the assistant headmaster, who retrieved the stolen stabilizer. Assistant Headmaster Kofi Apia told Love News he asked the students to strip naked to their underwear and lock them up in his office until the next day.
So I was trying to inquire from them where they got it, and they were not trying to tell me the truth. And it was late in the night. School management, the teachers weren't around, headmaster too wasn't around, and I didn't want to take any decision outside them. So I decided to keep them in my office so that the following morning, that is today, when the head comes and then the other management members also come, then we sit on the issue and then we trash it out. Unfortunately, there was this liquid soap there that they used to clean the office. I don't know what happened, and then one of the students took it. And I don't know whether he drank it or whatever. So they called me in the morning and said that he has drunk some of the, what do you call the liquid soap. So quickly we came, and then he was there on the ground. And then we took him to the hospital. And then later on the headmistress came, and they reported the case to the commander, the BNI first. And then the police commander also came in. So right now the other guy, they have taken the other guy to the police. And this one too is at the hospital. And so that is the issue now.
Is it true they were stripped to their boxer as they speak?
Oh, yeah. And I just, they were wearing some white shirts, and then I said they should took the white shirt off. And they were wearing the boxer all right. But you see, the police, I can take you there, is very nice police. The fan was there, the light was there, everything was there. You have everything clean.
So were they locked inside the office for the whole night?
My own office, yes. I locked them in my own office, just for the headmistress to come the following day and the other management members to come, so that we can trash out the issue.
My worry was that anything could have happened in the night while she left them there. Anything at all could have happened.
I told them that definitely they will urinate. So before that, I asked them to urinate, so that they won't go and then maybe have that problem over there.
One of them drank a liquid hand-washing soap he found in the office. His colleague in the morning shouted for help to draw the attention of other teachers on campus, who rushed him to the Ajoso Government Hospital. We are told by health officials he is responding to treatment, but we were not allowed to speak with him directly. But his mom has been telling us what actually happened.
Assistant headmaster ne bonasu sana akura ne kachire me senka akwala no bani be na odi ya mutumi loko no e wo dem mutumi loko no wo dem nti ade na wonum ye no wonum ye na wo wu ya na isa akwala no ade chinye wo wu.
Reporting for Joy News, Erastus Asaredonko, Kumasi.
Well, we have to go, but before then, let's bring you this one. Top government officials on Wednesday joined hundreds of mourners to mark 1 week of the passing of the chief executive of the Forestry Commission, Kojo Usuefriye, in his hometown, the Ashanti region. The Vice President, Dr. Mahmoud Baumia, and the Chief of Staff, Akusia Fremont Pare, led a host of government appointees forming the whole delegation. Now, the Kwabre district town of Sakrawuno was a scene of a milling crowd as politicians, public servants, media personnel gathered to commiserate with the family of the late Sir John. Ohiminteria was there for Joy News.
The Chinese government is giving all 53 applies to help.
The former General Secretary of the MPP, also known as Sir John, passed 3 weeks ago at the Kolebu Teaching Hospital after a short illness. The 1 week rise, held strictly under COVID-19 safety protocols, also provided avenue for some merrymaking. Our life artist, Kofi Adu, also known as Ejaku and Kechi Kwame Apia, among others, were on hand to entertain mourners. NPP bigwigs, including the National Youth Organizer, Henry Nanabwachi, eulogized the late Sir John for nurturing many young politicians currently in leadership positions.
Whatever you see around represent the meaning of the sad demise of Sir John. You know, everybody is talking good about Sir John because of one thing. Sir John was very selfless. Sir John offered his services to everyone in society. Every Tom, Dick and Harry in our country today is demonstrating sadness.
He's been a pillar. He's been a huge figure. A lot of promising young person in the party went through his hands. Myself, Samuel Uku, Antonia Beifa Kabo, Oredu, Foreign Affairs Deputy Minister, Martina J. Mensah Kosa, Perioku Jato. I can mention a tall list. Charles Owusu, and many, many more. Indeed, we have lost a huge personality. And for the young person, we will remember him for one thing, for how he stood behind the youth wing, how he nurtured and prepared the young people to be part of the decision-making body. And there's one thing, under his leadership as CEO, he created over 80,000 jobs for the youth. And that is why we are going to miss him.
From General Secretary, President, Yenim Kwan of us or Yejuma, or Yenipa, no Penny, Nasu Tembiana, or Adjunse or Bebuam, Mabru Abaso. He said, John, dear, Yabaka said, Udupon Kesepa, to 12 people among your conim, but yes, say, the Yamibetinia, Obi Antimesano, and Yaba, into Abusian Phone, Yama Munina Yako.
From Sakrawono for Joy News, for him interview reporting.
The late Sir John, he was a good man. May he so rest in peace. But that's where we're in the latest news update. But again, we run this by you, telling you that we're bringing to you live as the finance minister appears before Parliament. And in that chamber, we'll apprise members of how far the economy has performed, what reviews needs to be done, at least as we've been able to track ourselves the first 2 quarters and now just entered the next 2 quarters of the year amid coronavirus. And it's where we bring you this live presentation. Well, so we have to do the newspapers. And Mama, if you saw Boaje here, Mama, how are you?
Glory, glory, my United. Can we play the anthem, please? Hello, good morning. Hi there, Chelsea fans. Are you watching the show? Good morning to y'all. You were hammered yesterday.
Why you guys drew? Why are you happy?
We're not talking about, we got a point. We're talking about Chelsea. Are you hammered or not? What a way to lift
We're playing against the champions. At the time, we were able to
No, say it again. You were playing against?
I was playing against the champions.
Did
you play the champions? No. I don't know why you're doing this. I have some headache this morning. So.
Of course you will have a headache.
Oh, it's not because of Chelsea.
Now you're chasing the points.
It's not a problem.
Oh, unfortunately, I think it's unfortunate. My director this morning is also from the same camp, so we won't get the answer.
He's a Barca fan. He's not a Premier League person.
All right, guys. We thank God we're alive, back and well. Time for us to do the newspapers. If you miss the news, don't worry. We've got you covered. We'll have the newspapers, and we will run you through pretty much what's happening today. The media budget is high on our agenda. But let's start with the Daily Graphic newspaper. That's the paper that I have now. Front page, police warn law breakers at registration centers, say cases of violence being investigated. And they issued a statement yesterday, a very long one indeed. Details of that we will share with you. Ministers directed to GBC undermines constitution. The NMC reacts on the directive to cut channels from 6 to 3. Remember that issue. The NMC is speaking now. I was never flown out. That's the president. Remember when he was in self-isolation, some people said he had gone to the UK to treat coronavirus. He's cleared that issue. Blame political actors for violence. That's the Electoral Commission from their briefing yesterday. Let's do the back page of the paper. Fire guards Koforidua Central Market. Zipline delivers 79,800 medical products via drone. So that's what's on the back page of the paper, and that's what's on the front page of the Daily Graphic newspaper as well. We'll come back and tell you some of the stories in some of the inside pages. But let's continue with the Ghanaian Times. Front page of the Times now. Finance Minister outlines measures to boost economy amidst COVID-19. President cuts sought for construction of 600-bed Eastern Region Hospital. GBC's DTT platform Bruhaha, National Media Commission, kicks against Communications Ministry order. Disturbances at voter registration centers, deal with troublemakers, EC tells security agencies, and GetFund issues 2-week ultimatum for contractors to go back to sites. On the back page, Central Region fishermen received 300 subsidized outboard motors. Rehabilitation of Wamko, Efiekuma Road, begins. And so the business finder that turns business on Thursdays. Of course, mid-year budget expectations high. ICU pushes for extension of subsidies on utilities. Guta wants permanent bailout fund. One of the huge issues, of course, again, it's job losses. This time around, not necessarily people who have graduated who don't have jobs, but people who did have jobs, but because of coronavirus, who no longer have jobs. So the issue of jobs is still very high on the agenda. Of course, high on the agenda for us is the budget review. So we'll talk about all of those issues when we get there. Roland Walker.
Okay, so let me do the Daily Guide. Daily Guide has on the front page, Nana starts 70 million euro hospital in Kufuor. It's called the New Eastern Regional Hospital. It's a good one.
The New Eastern Regional Hospital. Okay.
Ultra modern. Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. Tears and wailing as Baumiamon said John. So rest in peace, Sir John. Was a very good man. Very, very good man. No chance for John Mahama, says Gabi Asari Ochidako. Good morning to you, Ms. Ochidako. I didn't fly to UK for COVID-19 treatment. The president. Back page, Aubameyang show of Barca move, right? Jobs did the trick, Dogboy declares. Yeah, he's under a new training regime, a new trainer, and he came out tops. Technical knockout, 8th round in that fight against Chris Avalos. David Villa, accused of sexual assault. He plays in the United States now, or used to play in the United States, I have to say. Was a former Spain and Barcelona star. Before then, I think had been playing for Sevilla or is it Sevilla or Valencia, one of them. Yeah. And then let's support GFA new season date. And it looks like Marco Kreku Mante, Oket Okreku. I said Marco Kreku. Oket Okreku is having some hard time with some of his insiders as far as football is related. We'll see how he's able to muddy the waters or go through. The Daily Dispatch has on the front page, EC registers 65.7% projected voters. And if you look at the numbers, the Electoral Commission has done very well in terms of the numbers per the projections. I don't know whether that will also mean that there were no ghost names after all, but it looks like now by day 20, they had hit 9.8 million people. They still have a number of days more to go. I just got a hint yesterday from a friend who is doing the registration, said it's been extended to 44 days. I don't know whether after 38 they'll do 6 more. I have to find out today. But that's what I was told. Kennedy, Japan donates $150,000 to save stranded Ghanaians in Lebanon. So he paid for their air passage to Ghana, you know, a charter flight and everything. That was, yeah, Mamavi's friend, Kennedy, Japan. Mamavi should have been the one telling us this, but I don't know why. She likes keeping some news.
You did off the
record. You won't tell us some things because they are personal. But now it's on the front page. You let the Daily Dispatch scoop us. I think the news editor needs to talk to you. Why you did that? GBA condemns violence at registration centers. It took them some time. It looks like they are now finding their voices small. Christian Council also had a strong worded statement. I don't know. You had to come to the shooting at the polling or the registration center at Kaswa. GBA condemns violent attack at registration centers. And then we do have GBC channels are not being given to Asasi TV. Gabi Asari Ochridako. Okay, and the back page is all full of. So we have how a Kumsin gun incident worrying on Mwakoban has expressed concern. So when that political science lecturer came here, we used to call him prior to 2016. Now we don't.
Are you done?
It looks like since our Kumsin, I've been observing a lot of people are talking.
Yes.
You serious? Though?
Yeah. Okay, let's bring our colleague Gifty under up here. Gifty, we've pretty much done the reviews, but yesterday, Gifty, good morning.
Yeah, and Roland, how are you guys doing?
Oh, great.
We're doing great.
Your first statement is always sober. I missed you. You didn't come to work yesterday.
Roland.
I did.
But Gifty, I just wanted us to reflect a bit on what has happened with Mavis Hawakumsing. Lots of statements, lots of statements on that. After, remember yesterday, you were concerned about the fact that people were a bit quiet. Newspapers were not heavily reporting on it, even though it was a major incident. I just want to, before you come in, the police yesterday also issued a statement on the violence at registration centers, but something that they said in that statement, and I'm picking the quotes from page 16 in the Daily Graphic newspaper. They said in the statement that those who claim to receive calls or reports of illegality from representatives assigned to registration centers should promptly contact local police officers for action instead of proceeding to the centers. Their presence contributes to the alleged illegality. And then any person or group of persons, political or not, who has been arrested or will be arrested will face the consequence of the law as far as police powers are concerned. But this is just part of the many other groups that have said something, particularly with Mavis Hawakumsing. I'll leave you to do the analysis for us in terms of where we are with this matter.
Well, I'll try and do my best with the, I hope that my internet is stable today as well. So I was going to say I'm happy today to see that we're not making that matter at rest and that we've raised it back up. Yesterday, as of the time I started the polls at 3 p.m., I think about 3:30 thereabout, there were 3 statements from different organizations, which I think was good. So we had CODEO issue their statement, we had the Ghana Bar Association issue their statement, and then we had the Ghana Christian Council, which has spoken already, but also issued a statement, and they were all condemning what happened both in Banda and in Kaswa. I think it was a great thing. I just hope that it will not be the usual rhetoric. For me, I see this to be an opportunity for us to, and especially the Electoral Commission, to begin to properly regulate the system. We're seeing a lot of politicians massing up and saying, we're doing checks at the registration centers, but I'm thinking, if you have your representatives there, should we really be encouraging people massing up and saying we're going to visit here to see what's happening? I mean, are they Electoral Commission officers? I don't know. But of course, we all know what it's for. It's essentially for, their political interest, to make sure that, sometimes to show face, sometimes to make it look as if we're doing something essentially to see maybe, and they'll go to a selected few. And these selected few will be places where they believe are problematic areas for them, etc. So I think that this will be an opportunity that perhaps we shouldn't miss, that the Electoral Commission will begin to regulate some of these visits by politicians to the registration centers. I think if we miss the opportunity, maybe we may not get one until we finish, and which I think will be soon. I also think it's an opportunity for us to begin to educate people on the challenge system. So if you don't think that somebody qualifies to register at a particular place, the Electoral Commission has told us that there is a process. Go pick up a form, fill it out, and let's deal with it. But it looks as if I won't allow you to go, I won't allow you to register, I won't allow, and then it escalates into, putting a little bit of political tensions, which may already be brewing there before we even started the registration exercise, and it just blows up. And like we saw in Banda, a 28-year-old guy who has just finished teacher training college, whose services we would need, who is going to teach our children, has just died. And because he will, just like that, you know. So I think that it's an opportunity for us to regulate the frequency with which politicians are visiting the registration centers, especially in COVID-19 times. And I think it's also an opportunity for us to begin to educate people more on the challenge system. Don't call your MP, don't call your political figureheads and tell them that I've seen so-and-so, he doesn't belong here. I've seen so-and-so, she doesn't belong here, but I've seen that they're coming to register. Really, pick up and fill it out. And I think that the political parties, I don't think this will go anywhere anyway, but I'll say it anyway, should be responsible at this point. You should be responsible. It's as if they are you know, sitting on tenterhooks. They're just waiting for an opportunity for something to ignite, and then they'll just jump at it and do politics with it. And at the end of the day, we're seeing people die and people hurt.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be serious.
And
let's be serious.
I think you've said it all. It's unfortunate that even those who sit in Parliament to make the laws, where there is a challenge process, if you think somebody does not qualify, would simply say that, oh, I was called and I came and there were people who were bashed, or there are people who don't come from the area who are registering, so I asked them to leave. You know, it's almost as if even those who are privy to the formation of the laws don't even know the laws any longer. So they go there and they try to verbally tell people to leave when that's not supposed to be the process.
They know. They just don't care. And they also, you know, there's this culture of impunity which we have allowed to fester. They know, but they know that, look, it's either they feel my party is in power, I can do what I want. I am the biggest opposition party in Ghana. I can do what I want. And if you take an action, I can amass people to come. Yesterday, I had someone make an analysis, and I thought it was very good. The person said that sometimes we look at these political figureheads and we think, or maybe Hawa Komse, for example, has been able to give the party a number of votes. So perhaps she's untouchable. Or if this woman, we keep her here, she'll be able to give us. But the person said, if you look at this person's contribution to your numbers, perhaps saving her there will cost you many more numbers in other constituencies. It will cost you many more numbers from among the floating voters. So it's a balancing act that we need to do. But I think that to be sincere with yourself, look out for the interest of the nation first, and don't support things that are ridiculously wrong.
Yeah.
You know, for our parties. And yesterday I also heard the NDC saying, you know, whatever means there is to protect yourself or defend yourself, by all means go for it. And it's as if, you know, we're doing the usual politics. I mean, we'll keep talking and hope that, you know, something changes.
I like the police statement, but it will be good for us to see results as well. I think that will even speak louder to people than just releasing a statement, even though I like very much the content of the statement yesterday. Roland, is there any other story of interest that you want us to highlight on?
Yeah, it's the president, you know, cutting sword for a 70 million euro new Eastern Regional Hospital in Koforidua. That event took place yesterday, even though this one is just the first phase of some 280-something bed capacity building that is going to be put together. But for me, it speaks to the fact that we're growing as a country. We want to invest more in health infrastructure. And as we do this, then it means that we want to provide state-of-the-art. Now, we have to get to the point where, as we provide state-of-the-art, we provide services that are also commensurate to all these. And I think that's a good step taken by the president and his government.
Are there timelines?
The question that came to my mind, yes, the timeline. The question that came to my mind was whether this one was part of the 88. You know, when COVID came, we hurriedly addressed the nation, and then we promised 88 health facilities and hospitals. So 6 hospitals and a health facility. So maybe I'll get in touch with Dr. Bernardo Kuboy and ask whether this one is the one out of the 6 forming the whole 88 as it is. So the first phase, as we have it, is going to start with the credit that has been secured, and then they'll move on to the next phase. And the first phase is going to be completed in 36 months.
36 months?
Yeah, starting.
Okay.
So that'll be, we have 24 months, then we have the next one, so on. So that's how we have this type of structure. Then we have to replicate this in not only regions, but other districts as well. Wow. As we seem to think, if we build one big one, then it means that the smaller ones then will support. So maybe that's the structure that we have.
Well, I want to take the opportunity to announce, because we've talked about the private sector fund. Remember, they started the initiative because of the numbers that we were recording with the COVID-19 to put up the first of its kind in Ghana, an isolation treatment center at the East Hospital. Well, thank God, with all of our supports, they have practically completed this first one, and it will be commissioned tomorrow, Friday. Yeah. Thank God for that. So congratulations to all of us. This is like a beautiful project, which is Ghanaian. This is Ghana, and we have some great CEOs and board chairs who spearheaded this whole concept with the support of the Ghana Armed Forces and every person that worked on this project. This was purely pro bono. Nobody got paid for it, but they still dedicated their time. So that's a project that will be launched tomorrow. Gifty, it will be on Pulse.
Oh, by all means, pause it. So I got a line for you, Mama Vijay Bibia Desha Pulse.
and Gifty, she has her name on the, what do you call that?
Well, Roland,
is it a plug or the...
This is unofficial. So I'm a project ambassador. I'm a proud one.
Oh yeah, I know she is. So she has an interest. But in fact, we all have an interest. I think
thousands of us supported. I don't know why it's you alone. I supported with 100 Ghana
we are
first.
Supported,
then I wanted to do 1,000, but I was only able to get to 400.
Okay. So Mamavi, I think it's a great thing, and I think the Ghana Armed Forces, I mean, they're great people. And tell you what, they love watching Joy News. I've been in a couple of training with some of them, and they just love Joy News. So this morning, a big shout out.
Is it the CDSR law or the whole? I mean, Gift is a woman's role.
I said some of them. So okay. I just want to send all of them a shout out this morning.
Which of them?
To the chief. Okay, the chief of defense staff, to all of them, the Ghana Army, we're grateful to them. Mamabi, I wanted to just quickly touch on the Roland's pick. Roland, about the amount involved in building the hospital. I remember being in the UK around this time, and we started discussing, Ghana's politics prior to the elections. And one of the things that came up, the MPP kept saying then was that they were going to bring Ghanaians value for our money. I'm seeing, is it 700 million euros?
No, 70 million euros.
Oh, 70 million euros. And people have said that if you put the amounts that our public sector spends on projects, you could, it's almost sometimes like a double of the amounts that people within the private sector will spend on some of these projects. I don't know what has gone into the value for money, that has been done in this particular project, but I hope that there has been some value for money going on there, and that this amount we're committing to one particular project is not amounts that will be able to build us, maybe 2 or 3 more projects.
Well, I can tell you this is less than how much was used to build the Greater Accra Regional Hospital, the Ridge expansion. Yeah. So.
Okay, I haven't done that analysis. I also wanted to comment on the Electoral Commission. They're giving us figures. They're telling us how many people they've been able to register. I think this put aside all the issues that we had with coronavirus and everything. I like the resolve of the Electoral Commission. I thought that it was unnecessary to do a registration from scratch. I still think it's unnecessary, but I like what they have done so far. I like their resolve. I like their focus and how they've been able to do it irrespective. And looking at the numbers, it looks like they're achieving their targets, which is great. I like the resolve. I don't think it was necessary, but I like the resolve.
I don't understand you. You like the resolve.
All right. On that note, let's spend like a minute on myjoyonline.com. Let's check out what's making headlines on our page, but also to just remind you, that our president is going to Mali. That's generated some conversations. Let's check out what's on myjournline.com.
The president went to Mali?
Yeah, because there's a situation in Mali and 5 West African presidents under the regional group ECOWAS will be in Mali today to resolve. No, this is not a matter. I don't think there's a matter for Zoom. Let's do
I think that way you can, they have to quarantine.
Directed to reduce GVC Crystal TV channels outside Communication Ministry's mandates, according to the National Media Commission. And this is emphatic, really. You know, what the NMC is saying. If you have time, kindly click on the entire story to understand it properly. Just so senior high school students hospitalized after failed suicide attempt over alleged theft. That's a really, really sad one. I think that I opened it up. Maybe we can share a bit of that story. It said a second-year student of the Ejisu Secondary Technical Senior High School has been hospitalized after drinking liquid soap in what is believed to be an attempted suicide on campus. This was after an assistant headmaster locked him up with a colleague overnight in his office for stealing the school's electric stabilizer on Tuesday night. And this Tuesday is July 21st. According to school authorities, the two were brought in by a taxi driver who allegedly caught them climbing over the school wall with the machine. The assistant headmaster, Kofi Apia, told Love FM's Erastus Asari, don't call that. He asked the student to strip naked, leaving only their underwear, and lock them up in his office until the next day because they were not forthcoming with information. We talked about impunity earlier. Gifty, you talked about that, and you see how it is playing out even in this matter.
Yeah, I think that the head teachers and teachers, you know, the power relations between head teachers and students and teachers and students, I thought that it would be getting better by now, because I mean, there's a way that you can talk to these people. There's a way that I hope we have time, but I did volunteer.
No, we don't have time.
Oh yeah, whatever. but I was just saying that I did volunteer sometime back in the UK, and in the schools, when students, you know, did anything bad, they'll be isolated somewhere, and it wasn't that bad. Sometimes they even had fruits where they are isolated.
In the UK.
No, but seriously, if we can just manage the student-teacher relationship, you know, the power relations, if we can just manage them and make them see that we love them rather than wanting to punish them.
How do you strip somebody naked and lock them up overnight because you think they've stolen something?
It's not okay.
Yeah, you know, and there's one thing I have found out about the current generation of young children. Their mindset is a bit different. It's been influenced by current trends in media, social media. Their psychology is different, and they are very soft on the mind. Of course, you want to break them and make them tough, but in order to do that, you have to be very much interactive with them. And get to know that you care, and give them reason why you want to punish them. And if you don't do that, you put them in trouble.
But even in this one, they haven't even confessed, though. So you actually don't even know for sure if they even did it. But if they even did a thing like that, to strip them naked, lock them up in your office overnight, seriously?
Yeah, I mean, I know some students can be stubborn, but I mean, this is not okay.
Yeah.
This is not okay.
Gifty, did you say that you have a thing for Liverpool or Chelsea? Which one did you say? Or Arsenal? Oh, Man City.
Also, only one support.
Okay. So do you understand what happened yesterday?
Oh, wait, so I started with Arsenal, and I said that I have changed positions. I'm now with Man City. But then I'm saying that I've also, you know, I mean, when I heard that Arsenal had done well, I thought that maybe I should go back. Then yesterday I saw that Liverpool, in fact, yesterday when I saw the video of them lifting the trophy, I was like, oh, wow, Liverpool is the club to belong to.
Just like that.
Just like that.
Well, they waited. They had to wait for 3 decades and a couple of months to lift the trophy in an empty stadium.
What happened?
No, but the thing I like about Liverpool yesterday is the thrashing of Chelsea. I mean, unbelievable. So I love them. Your enemy's enemy is your friend, and they are like my best friend this morning. Oh, say Liverpool. So for all the Chelsea fans, listen, we are bringing back what went down yesterday, the 5-3, when you thought you could come back and then it never happened. Now you're struggling to see if you can get a point at least out of Wolves.
Shame on you, Mama V and Gifty. We're going for sports. We'll be right back.
We're not.
We'll bring Bafakwa United to that level Sunday.
Gifty, we'll see you later on Pulse.
Manchester United drew 1-1 with West Ham United at Old Trafford. Their last game is against Leicester City at the King Power Stadium. What a game that will be for the race for the top four. Tomorrow, I'll be here with analysis and how it's all going to go down this weekend on Sunday when the final games are played in the English Premier League. But remember, West Bromwich Albion are back in the Premier League. Yesterday, they joined already qualified Leeds United for the playoffs. The four teams, fortunately for us, Andre Ayew, his Swansea team, have made it to the playoffs. So they joined the likes of Brentford and Cardiff and Fulham. Yes, those are the four teams that are going to play in the playoff. But briefly, before I take leave of you, the Vice Chairman of the Ghana Premier League Committee, JC Japan, has expressed delight following the Ghana Football Association's sponsorship agreement with sports apparel manufacturer, that's Macron. Now, the deal is valued at 1.6 million Ghana cedis. They will supply 5,000 pieces of footballs and 1,500 pieces of bibs every season to the Premier League clubs, the MTN FA Cup, and also the National Division 1 League.
It means that there is support coming into the football fraternity. Over the past couple of weeks, you may have seen the GFA president and the marketing team going out trying to engage with corporate Ghana to get a requisite attention first and to get a requisite support for our football. So it's exciting to see that one out of the many who had been approached by the FA president have stepped forward to engage with a football fraternity through support. And for me, it's exciting, and it seems like a beginning of things to come.
Okay, how difficult was it pulling out this deal?
Well, I think that it's as the marketing team would always say, first of all, it's not easy having a football conversation. And then in Ghana today, and the second layer of trouble is in relation to COVID and what COVID had actually done. So even having the sponsors willing to speak to you in a time like this was quite difficult. But with the announcement of the next season coming up, it means that the opportunity is there. It means that the FA is much more prepared. It means that the football fraternity is actually prepared, and therefore it wasn't easy, but it's a good conversation that has been had so far.
So that was just Japan in that interview with Mubarak, my colleague, and that's how we end sports here on the M Show. I'm Benedict. To join us at 2 on Sports Today, there will be more sports, and the show continues after the short break. Don't go away.
And it's all leading up to the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, appearing before Parliament to brief members on the state of our nation 2 quarters into the year. As already we've entered the 3rd quarter, we need to have a certain outlook, as has been what the practice of the norm in the 4th Republic. We've seen an assessment of the economy mid-year and then usually supplementary budgets being presented. But, back in November, when the Finance Minister appeared before them, he didn't know that 2 months down the lane, we're going to have record cases of coronavirus starting in China, trickling into the United States of America, the European Union, and all of us now facing the threats. What does it mean? We need to do dispassionate analysis of this. And we're here together, myself and Mama Yusawaj. Mama V.
Yes, Roland, and I must add that this is actually the first comprehensive fiscal policy statement to Ghanaians after the emergence of COVID-19. We've heard the Finance Minister write and speak on several occasions in that interview that we played back to you with George Riafe. But this is the first one where we will understand the kind of damage that COVID-19 has done to our economy. We've got a guest in the studio. Mr. Michael Boateng is Senior Tax Manager with KPMG, the audits firm. Good morning to you. Thank you for being here.
Good morning to you, Mr. Boateng.
Also joining us via Zoom is Evans Asari. He's Senior Advisor at KPMG. And Dr. Lord Mensah is Senior Lecturer University of Ghana Business School, also joining us via Zoom for this conversation. And so, Ronan, we want to start the conversation rolling.
Okay, and so as we start the conversation, I have to ask our guests joining us virtually, which now has become the norm these days. Can you all hear us? Dr. Lord Mensah, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Great. Mr. Evans Asari, can you hear me?
Yes, please, I can hear you. I hope you can also hear me.
Yes, I can. I'm very familiar with you as well. Only not Mr. Boateng here. But look, familiarity is now a watchword we are with coronavirus. But back in November, when we had the finance minister appearing before Parliament, what was the state of the economy? Mr. Boateng.
Yeah. If you look at the state of the economy when the finance minister presented the budget, and you look at the objective of the budget, that's the creation of jobs and other things in the perspective, you will see that the finance minister actually came up with programs and then projects. You know, we were expecting a GDP growth of around 6.8. We were expecting a budget deficit around 4.3 or so. And then we will have a fiscal, more or less, a cover. I mean, cover for about 3 points, around 3 months or so. So those were very positive things that we were expecting. From a tax perspective, we also had a lot of very positive, more or less, programs to make sure that there were a lot of enhancements in the tax administration, and also in terms of making sure that we enhance our tax collection. So those were the key things that we had from the state of the economy as of that time. And as you know, things have really changed. So, and I think that brings us to this conversation this morning.
Mm.
And Mr. Lord Mensah, Dr. Lord Mensah, sorry, holding a PhD is not easy, but when coronavirus hit, we have the finance minister now coming to downgrade, so to speak, what our initial variables should be by way of the targets. Can you apprise us of what he said at the time that he addressed Parliament during that period when coronavirus was hard hitting?
Yeah, well, if you look at the Constitution, in times of situations of things like COVID-19, which is more or less a natural state that can happen at any point in time, the finance minister have the mandate to go and request for, let me put it this way, kind of a bridge financing. Now, on May 27th, he went to the Parliament and request for a kind of financing that he thinks coronavirus, has, exposed us to which we may not necessarily be able to make up in terms of revenue, and then possibly a support to handle the coronavirus over the period. So the finance minister indicated that over 15.5 billion revenue shortfall faces the country. And then also COVID-19 more or less also comes with certain expenditure, which is about, let's say, 3-point-something billion. Now, the total figure gives us about 21 billion Ghana cedis that the finance minister foresee that in the year we need to spend. Now, if you look at the 2019 budget, which was read with optimism, without any fear or doubt of a natural state like COVID happening, the deficit that the finance minister indicated, projected deficit, let me put it that way, but it was in the budget, it was about 18-point-something billion. Now, if you take that and relate it to the 21 billion the finance minister requested, clearly it gives you the signal that he still wants to hold on to that, deficit, i.e., keep the expenditure around the 18 billion, and then the revenue that he anticipates to raise around the 65-point-something billion, which the difference of about 18 billion clearly faces the country. Now, finance minister issued, indicated that the government will issue bond for which, the Bank of Ghana will buy
those bonds that has been issued are the monetary policy rate that was going at that time during the COVID time. And so that bond was issued, and Bank of Ghana bought into it, for which the government was able to raise the 10 billion out of the 21 billion. And so if you ask me going forward, what we expect, I would say that, yes, the 11 billion that was left, how the finance minister is going to raise that money is what we need to discuss here. And yeah, so that is basically what happened during the COVID.
Well, we've come to a point in time, Ms. Hassari, where we know the pattern of expenditure. But before we even said we wanted to go in for these monies from the Bretton Woods institutions, we also do know that some of our key partners had also been affected. Look, that's the reality. Our budget, each year we've read it over the last 10 years, have meant that we need to source funding abroad to be able to finance at least 60% of this type of expenditure. We raise it in grants, we raise it in loans, we raise it in other sort of some multilateral budgetary support. By March, we do know that 30 million jobs had been lost in the United States. It means that it's a no-go area. You can't go to Trump and say, I need more money. The British had also been facing some great difficulties. China, well, some leeway. By April, they were out of the woods somewhat, trying to recover, but it also means that all doors were closed. Mr. Asari, where were we going to get the money? Where have we been able to forage to get something back into the economy?
That's the multi-million-dollar question that I don't envy any finance minister at this stage to be answering, really, because initially we started 2020 with a deficit, as Doctor has said. So we needed to bridge that gap. And then COVID hits you hard and it widens this gap. And so this is the challenge for any minister, finance minister, to resolve. However, I think the most important thing here to note is that these multilateral institutions have really availed themselves to assist, especially the developing countries, to address some of these challenges. So we saw the IMF coming up with a rapid credit facility program, which Ghana immediately assessed. And then we got some money, almost about $1 billion, to support these initiatives. So we still would have to rely on these multilateral institutions to support our budget deficit. In fact, it is not only Ghana alone that is struggling to get funding. The United Nations put out an appeal, a humanitarian appeal for about $10 billion to support countries that are hard hit. To date, they have received less than 20% of that funding. I hear they have only 1.7 billion out of the 10 billion that they asked for. So we are all going into a pool that is really limited, and therefore we need to find a way to spread this pool to cover everybody. I think the most important question that this situation raises is, should we now be focusing more inward rather than outward? Should we now look at domestic sources of revenue rather than always, going out to the international market to look for funding? These are questions that we need to answer. To date, we are saying that our tax to GDP ratio is very low compared to international benchmarks. Do we need to start asking ourselves, what do we need to do as a country to raise domestic sources of financing to be able, that is sustainable? We are not looking at the ones that are not sustainable, but sources of funding that we can say that we are going to rely on for the next 5 to 10 years to support our budget deficit. So yes, it is a challenge for any finance minister to go to the market to raise funding at this stage. But the hope is that multilateral institutions have availed certain facilities for developing countries to assess and then to be able to help mitigate some of the impact of COVID-19.
Outlook of any country, one of the key indicators would be our currency and how it is doing against the major currencies in the world. And one of the other areas will be revenue collection. You're the tax man, Mr. Boateng. Help us appreciate how much we were hoping that we could collect locally, and then we can also do the analysis of our currency.
Okay. So at the beginning of the year, when the budget that we are working with, we had an estimation of around tax revenue. We're looking at around 46 billion Ghana cedis from tax revenue. Now, even though if you look at it, the total revenue, we're looking at around 66 or 67 million. However, if you take a step back, I think in the grand scheme of things, one thing that we should all look at is, at this point, the key issues that we always worry ourselves with, that is deficit and shortfalls. We are now with what we call not in the normal world. So things that we would have worried ourselves in terms of deficit, in terms of shortfalls, that would have translated into either not the so-called no good macroeconomic conditions. These are all gone. Now, back to your question, how do we now as a country, or what is now being done to actually address some of these shortfalls and how to finance it as a country? If you take a step back, one of the things where we sit as practitioners, we've seen there are other various avenues that this COVID-19 brings to bear that we should all think about in terms of enhancing our tax administration. One of the areas that we know, and most of our research and polls that we always do, is that to make sure that you get the tax administration or tax compliance more friendlier. One of the things you can see is the use of digitization. Now it's making it easier for tax people to comply with taxes by spending less time to comply, by being in the house, and they can file their tax online. Another area that brings to bear, which I think we are likely to talk about in this discussion, is on the e-commerce. So that's another area that you may have to look at.
Okay. So I want to bring Dr. Lord Mensah. We're talking about paying taxes, complying, and using the mediums that we have, going digital. But people have lost jobs. There are people who didn't have jobs in the first place. There are people who did have jobs who've lost their jobs. Businesses are not doing well. So how do we comply with the obligations that we have? And also remember the release in utilities that we got as a people in this country. How has that also affected our revenue collection?
Mama, in times like this, everybody knows that economies get restructured. Economies change their, dimensions. Now, if you had an economy where probably agriculture was driving or calling the shot, obviously you know that, your taxes should be geared towards those areas. Now, during this pandemic, we are all aware that everything has been virtual. Now, let's not look at, the revenue side alone in terms of, management of this economy. We have to look at the expenditure side as well. Now, if you look at the 2020 budget, which was read in 2019 November, clearly, there are some expenditure items that are, more or less non-statutory. Now, if I say non-statutory, it means there are things you can do away with, and in times like COVID like this, without necessarily stressing your economy. Now, let's go back to the expenditure side of what we read, the budget we read in 2019 for 2020. Clearly, I observed two items, which for me, I think the government can look at that side and possibly sacrifice, those items. You don't touch on, capital expenditure, because we know we are in election year. Some things that has been promised needs to be given. To win votes and all those. The political aspect of it. But then there's also interest payment and all those, which are statutory. And even that one, we could see some cushioning, when the COVID came from, our creditors. And then also, if you look at salaries and emoluments, you cannot, those are statutory. Now, things like, if you look on the expenditure side, you could see things like grants to government agencies, which is about 15 billion. You can also see other, expenditure, which is about almost 3 billion. Now, if you put those together, that is the 18 billion deficit that we see that we must finance by hook or crook, by borrowing, by raising money from our own market, and by export and whatever, we intend to use to finance this deficit gap. So what prevents us from looking at those items? Because look, these non-statutory expenditure are not earmarked. Grant to state government agencies are not earmarked, expenditure. Other expenditure is also not earmarked. So clearly you see that, those monies, even though will help the economy, but they are funds or expenditure that we can easily sacrifice at this time just to balance the sheet of the state so that we can survive during this, COVID-19 and then prepare ourselves going forward. So we shouldn't stress ourselves too much on looking at just as a revenue side and then think about the expenditure side as well. Somebody will say, but Doc, it will not be politically wise to do that and all those. But hey, let me tell you, we are in a COVID era. We are in a state which is not normal, a state where we need to be conserved as much as we can. Now, let me come to the revenue side, asking how do we, reconcile with these job losses and all those. Now, if you take, the economy as we speak now, I think earlier on one of the panelists indicated that we cannot go out there easily to go and borrow, but rather we should rely on, Bretton Woods institution and philanthropical, funding that are coming to us. I would say that in times like this, every country look inwards. Look inwards for your financing. So I was happy when the finance minister went to Parliament to ask for bridge financing, and then as a result of it, the government issued bond for which Bank of Ghana bought into that bond. It's a way of, tapping into your local financing. Now, if you look on the treasury bill market, clearly you could see that, God being so good before COVID, we managed to bring the treasury bill rate down, which is an advantage. Now, in times like this, business confidence has gone down completely. And so everybody is trying to find avenue for investment. So trust me, if government should go to the market going forward to raise money, right, through treasury bills, government can get it at a cheaper cost. And then at the same time, the necessary funds will be attracted. And so by so doing, we should be able to, get money from our own, market to finance, the necessary expenditure that we need for, we have to do for this country. So, Mama V, if you ask me, basically that is how I see things. But then let's look at the tax aspect. Now, if you take, the economy, like I started my submission by saying that, the economy has been restructured as a result of COVID. Now, e-commerce is what is booming now. Now, telcos are the ones making the money. If the government can assure us that if we increase a bit of taxes in those areas, those institutions or those corporate entities will not pass it on to, the customer. They are all part of, ways that we think, those companies can also help absorb some of the, the pains that goes with this, COVID-19 shocks.
Okay.
By increasing a bit of taxes in that direction, and for me, that should be able to, help the country in a way.
Okay. We'll come back to how we as a people will receive any kind of further taxes in that sector. But before we get to the second bit of our conversation, Mr. Evans Asare, I want you to touch on the effects of job losses on the economy.
Right. Thank you so much. I think it's the scale of the job losses is still becoming clear to us at this stage. I mean, if you look at the hard-hit sectors like the tourism sector, where we are seeing tens of thousands of people are out of job. If you look at the agro-processing sector, if you look at the export sector or the trade, let me put it together as trade, where a lot of these companies are unable to do business because borders are closed. I mean, it is becoming a massive, and a daunting task for any economy to manage that. One, the effect of these job losses also goes back to government because there is the loss of tax revenues from these employees who otherwise would have been paying taxes in terms of, payee and then all other, taxes that may be due to government. Number two, there is also the loss of pension contributions. I mean, speaking to some sources, there is a reduction in the monthly pension contribution, which was quite significant from March, April, up to June because of the job losses. And of course, you and I know that our pension is also very critical to us. And so about 30–40% drop in monthly contributions is quite significant. And so if you put all these together, it has a very sort of vicious cycle where the job losses, leads to loss of revenue to government, loss of pension, and then also the economic impact also becomes clearer as, these job losses also become clearer. What is interesting to note is that whereas in certain economies, there are what we call the employment benefits where people can register and go and queue for some monthly payout. It is quite difficult at this stage. I mean, the resources that we have are limited. And so what does the finance minister do to avert some of the impact of job losses on the economy? There is a direct impact on livelihoods. I mean, we are protecting livelihoods, but people were at home and didn't have jobs to do, and it had effect on what they would be able to buy and then even eat at home. And so I think it is quite a difficult situation we find ourselves in as we speak. For developed countries like the United States, where they are able to estimate the number of job losses. I mean, there were times that they were mentioning figures that are staggering, like 20–30 million people out of job. That is almost the entire population of this country. So you can imagine that if we have that percentage of people in Ghana who are out of job at this stage, how do you manage this? And I think the most important question is, how do we put together a plan to ensure there is a gradual recovery and to ensure that these people gradually get back into employment to be able to, get some kind of livelihood? That is the most important question that we need to
we will throw that back at you later on in the course of this conversation so we can get some recommendations. But we've also been speaking to some personalities. Former Finance Minister Seth Terkper has been speaking to us on new taxes, COVID management, and the economy in general. Also giving us thoughts on this is Professor Godfred Bokping. He's speaking about recovery, getting our economy back on track in the agricultural sector. We want to take a listen to them.
So you're a tax expert. Ahead of Thursday's presentation, the finance minister is saying that he's not going to add new taxes. As a tax expert, if you were in his shoes, will you introduce new taxes?
First of all, we are not going to increase taxes. Was it not barely a year ago, less than a year actually, when ESLA levy was increased, taxes were increased. Was it not just in 2019 that the credit that businesses get, for Get Fund and NHIL, as though it were VAT, was it not only this year that it was removed, which is an indirect increase in the VAT rate? Have we not had personal income taxes going up as high as 35, the top bracket 35, reduced to 30? As you sit here, I don't know your salary. But
you don't want to know.
But if I put you in Ghana's middle income, class, right? Ghana's middle income class, Are you aware that your salary and that of many middle-income countries, right? Middle-income Ghanaians, that was between 10 and 15%, has been increased, and you are being taxed at 17.5%. And if it went beyond that, you would have ended at 25. Your executives would
So
have
in short, you wouldn't have introduced new taxes if you were in his shoes?
No, in short, I'm saying the minister can say so because he has increased the taxes already. He has increased the taxes already. He increased them incrementally. That's why what we have been told, we reduce 17 taxes, and I'm enumerating them for you. I've enumerated 5. He has extended the temporary taxes that should have gone away. They were increased. That's the 6th one. So I'm saying that, no, it's a smart way, another smart way of telling Ghanaians, you know, I'm not going to increase your tax when you have done that thing already. It's been done already. According to the documents given to Parliament, about 2.2 billion Ghana cedis, right, of the loan that we are borrowing, sovereign bond, is going to finance free SHS because, you know, because of the pressure under the law not to use oil revenue. Are we going to be borrowing 2.2 billion annually? Even the cities to finance free SHS.
From all these indicators, do you think government can continue to fund the free SHS with COVID in now?
We are the progressively fee-free. So I can say for sure that if we had continued with the infrastructure, right, and we had built, completed our 200 free SHS schools. People say, you know, but what would have happened? Precisely what would have happened was that we would have finished 200 free SHS schools. Can you imagine the impact of students staying in their community to attend school? Boarding costs will be down, and all those day schools, they will be sleeping on verandas, and other day students who are day students posted outside their homes and they are sleeping on verandas because there are no boarding houses, no infrastructure. No.
So what should government do now?
The trajectory will definitely be different.
So what should government do?
You know, as somebody who has advised governments, you know, and disclosure, I worked at a firm. You don't give solutions until somebody gives you the figures. Yes, on what are you basing, you know, on what are you basing the advice? So I'm saying, let us see the full cost of free SHS. Let's see where it is coming.
In my own estimation, it's going to take us more than 3 years. It's going to. And a good way to understand that is to look at the statement the Finance Ministry made on the 30th of March, where they talked about growth decelerating to about 2.5% or 1.5% given the worst scenario with the partial lockdown. And that has been reviewed. That has been revised downwards again. So I think that, of course, I do not have all the data as they would, but from where I sit, I think we are looking at beyond 3 years. Okay. And the reason is simple. If you look at the immune system of the economy, it's not that strong. So we may not be able to have the kind of recovery that other countries should be able to do, also because we don't have the fiscal space. Now, if you look at the various stimulus arrangements, they haven't been that deep. If you look at the revenue envelope, it hasn't expanded that much. Expenditure remains elevated. The real effect of all the interventions we have done will begin to show in the next couple of years in terms of the debt buildup. And once you are not generating enough revenue to be able to even cover your compensation of employees and interest payment, it leaves you with very little to be able to finance the recovery. That is our challenge right now. So I think realistically, we should be looking at beyond 3 years. You see, Inshira, the reality is that when you have growth decelerating from 6.8% to let's say 0.9%, it tells you that you're going to require less input to produce less output.
okay, less input in terms of labor, in terms of capital, and all of that. But when you also see output decelerating sharply like that, it also translates to income losses.
Now,
okay? And it translates to other sectors of the economy as well.
Right.
And it's all about recovery and how we're able to weather the storm, so to speak. But then it brings us to the crunch issues. The reality is that where we find ourselves is by force majeure. We didn't anticipate this. Now, we've seen that it looks like apparently there was something good in the economy after all, because over the last 3-4 months, sanitizers were produced. We've had various sectors that are related to health able to do some recoveries by way of manufacturing, etc. Indeed, by 2017, 2018, we've seen some massive growth in industry. And if you look, you take that by the figures, 6% excess by the projection for 2020. What should we be doing right by way of the empowering or empowerment for the various sectors? And which one should we take more seriously?
Okay. Thank you, and I think I'm happy that we have this positive conversation out of this COVID-19 issue. From our discussions and then from our observations, one of the key areas that need to be looked at is now we realize that digitization is not the way to go. This is an area where it enhances business operations. So, for instance, I was having a discussion with an officer, and we had discussions virtual. I mean, we could have someone from another country being in an office discussing tax issues. This is a case that that person would have to fly into Ghana to have that discussion. Now, we realize that people can do a lot of business online. We can, if we increase or we enhance our digitization, education, we can do e-learning. That means that we don't need to invest in infrastructure. Now, with e-learning or working from home, you could see that now reduction in transportation and other things. So, but if you take a step back, it involves a lot of infrastructure. So the question is, can we as a country appreciate the fact that this is bringing a lot of good things to us, and can we invest, and in the long term, it will really change the operations that we work. I think so. When you look at digitization, we look at it from even business. Now, let's come back to my favorite subject, that is taxation. Digitization, actually, with this COVID-19 has really brought a lot of positive things. I made mention of filing returns online. I can tell you that on a month-to-month basis, when we have to file taxes on behalf of taxpayers, we have to drive to various tax offices, stay in queue just to file returns. Can you imagine that you can do this within maybe something that we could spend about 4 hours to do? You can use only about maybe 25 minutes. Just email the returns. You can use SWIFT and pay online. Can you see the beauty of this? And this is something that has been in discussion all these years, and I'm happy this is bringing this conversation to bear. So that looking at the digitization. Now, as you made mention of, now we are using there are a lot of local industries producing PPEs. That is where taxation comes in. How can we give them reliefs? So to make sure that we enhance the operation, to give them something to inject funds in the form of tax reliefs, to make sure these industries are really working. I know the government has been doing a lot of this. For instance, if you look at the 2020 budget, it made mention that for venture capital, there were certain tax exemptions that they were going to have. They will not pay VAT on certain transactions. These were good things. But I think as a country, even though it goes back to the point that when you are giving these reliefs, somebody is saying that we are having deficits because we are not getting the money to fund the operations. But however, I think we should all have the appreciation that this is what we need to do as a country. Because all the other developed countries, when you look at China, you look at especially Japan and other countries, deficits are not something that they think about because they look at the long-term effect. So we as a country, this is the kind of discussion that we should have. So we're talking about digitization. E-commerce is also now a way to go to make sure that now with digitization, people can sit in the comfort of their home and do business. And I heard Dr. Lord Mensah made mention of that. digital e-commerce and those things. Now, a lot of big businesses are moving into that area. So these are all areas that need to be looked at. But in the backdrop of this, what we expect from tax practitioners is to make sure that our tax laws in line with the e-commerce and e-business is really strengthened. Currently, what we have is just a statement or something, a broad statement saying, if you're having these businesses also, these are things that you need to do in terms of register for VAT and how you collect the taxes.
What specifically would you want or advocate?
What we advocate is that there should be a clearer guidelines. What the guidelines means that if you are providing e-commerce or you're having a platform that people can buy and sell, who is responsible for making sure that the buyers have actually collecting the taxes? How do you make sure that whose responsibility is that, and what are the penalties? Because I can tell you that some taxpayers may go and ask and look at tax law and they ask officers, so give me the guidelines, and there's none. So they may have to look at other areas.
But isn't that why the GRA, Roland, sorry, isn't that why the GRA is there? Because if we are thinking about ways to make this easier on us, and we are saying digitization, then the GRA must certainly also be looking at digitization and be going alongside.
Absolutely, and to be honest with you, they are doing that. But I think now this conversation is saying now let's zoom up.
Yeah.
Now everybody should be on board.
The demand is there.
Exactly, the demand.
Dr. Mensah, you and I have had this conversation about how e-commerce should always have been a priority in ICA. Indeed, the National Identification Authority, after the Kufuor administration went off the scene by way of the governance structure, then it meant that it went dormant. We've resuscitated it. It's been slow. The mason who built your house or my house doesn't get to pay a direct tax, so to speak, or doesn't get to pay some taxes on whatever his earnings are. It's in cash. Okay? Now, we know that the demand is there. We want to do this, but the database is not available. How do we drive this within this time, speedily enough?
You see, if you look at this country, with the projects that we've been initiating, digital this, digital that, digital whatever you can name them, they are all geared towards, getting a database to ensure that we can easily identify businesses wherever they find themselves, to ensure that the mason who is doing my job, like you said, the plumber who is working for me can easily be identified, attached to their jobs. Whatever earnings they are having can also be channeled through maybe a medium. I mean, mobile money can be one of them. If you go to the MTN as we speak now, I remember I had a transaction and then there was kind of a problem with the transaction. And in the end, I went straight to the office and asked them, can they give me a trail of all the transactions I've done? The response I got was, I need to do, you could see the problems that goes with requesting for such information, for which I know the systems they are using have them. Now, on daily basis, if each and every one who is working is being paid through the digital system, which of course I was going to talk about the consolidation of all these digital approaches that we've been adapting, we've been investing in. We keep on talking about, revenue shortfall, but we are making investment on revenue shortfall. Being cut every day on digitalization of, our address systems, digitalization, national identification card, have we consolidated all these databases that we are creating? That is where the problem is. Now, as we speak now, I don't want to veer off into this dispute on using BEFCET, which feeds into, national identification card, feeds into passport, and in the end, there was a ruling that we cannot use BEFCET and all those. Now, we've jumped on one step further by, establishing a database, which is the national identification card. Have we integrated this national identification card to the digital address system that we commissioned some time ago? These are all investments that are geared towards, enhancing revenue collection. What are we doing as a country? We're spending on revenue, enhancement projects, but then it's not feeding into, that what do you call revenue realization that we're supposed to have, or improvement we're supposed to have. Now, if you ask me, what can we do to ensure that, at the end of the day, if someone works, maybe at the informal sector, somebody works, we can easily capture, his payment and then possibly tax, that payment. The government should work hand in hand with the telcos, because mobile money has penetrated almost every corner of this country. I can tell you the maximum you're supposed to travel to get your mobile money transaction on the average is not up to 3 miles. So for me, the government should use that database. In other parts of the world, what they do at the end of the year is that they look into your accounts, all the possible transactions you've done. They look at it, your inflows and outflows, and then whether you've exceeded a certain quota, and then slap some tax on it. So effectively, we should, consolidate all these databases, including the database that, the telcos have, so that we can restrict transactions through those mediums. And possibly by the end of the year, or possibly by middle of the year, we can track all these possible transactions that, the informal sector have been doing. And then in the end, we can slap, the taxes in that direction. So if you ask me, I would say that we should integrate all the investment that we've done. We should consolidate all the investment that we've done as far as revenue enhancement, is concerned. And it should be able to go a long way to help us.
Yeah, quite interesting point you made there, and all of you would agree. For example, in the UK, you earn outside what your regular earnings are, which is struck by the system. Then there's a tax on it, and that taxable 40% of your earnings also means that it's what they're able to keep in-country sectors safe, and then even get to have some to even lend to us. But Mr. Asari, in business, we have what we call off-takers. We have markets, literally. All these things that we're doing, we're now in a confine. We've closed 30 million people. We say that give rebates, give monies, give surpluses, or let's say give some funding to etc. sector, etc. sector, etc. What happens when the world opens up? Let me put that to you, Mr. Boateng. What happens when the world opens up?
Yeah. So that is a very interesting question, and I think it's something that, as we are all collecting those benefits and those things, we should all understand that this is it's like unlimited resources that we are just collecting. At some point, the dynamics will change. The government will need to mop up all these resources to make sure that it gets to what he wants to do. Now, the good thing is that whenever you are giving out these benefits, the idea is that let these businesses thrive. Let them create more jobs. Let this business do well. You get your revenues. You get the government revenues from taxes that it will collect. The employees will be hired. They will pay PAYE and those things. The government will get money. They also have money to spend so that it will also make the economy grow. And I think, lastly, it's also bring political stability. Can you imagine everybody is not working? So these are some of the backdrop of some of these decisions which are taken. So in the short term, it's good that when we hear this assertion, give out more money, give out stimulus packages, give tax exemptions, especially like what was done to the frontline workers, to give them more incentivize them to do all these things. There are so many things that all these things are doing that it does in the short term, but in the long term, the government actually benefits, because when you have more businesses through your incentives, what you are going to see is that you have all these avenues for you to generate your revenue, it brings political stability, and it makes the nation grow. And I think that's what we need to look at.
In the US and in Europe elsewhere, they call it consumer spending. And it's one of the ways by which the economies in the US, EU, China, etc., tend to collect their taxes or their revenues. And when consumers spend, it also means that more money into the economy. Now, when the world opens up, Dr. Lord Mensah, the various concerns that we had about how well packaged our goods and services are will come to haunt us again. How competitive the products that we have on the market will come to haunt us again. And then which market are we sending the surpluses will come to haunt us again. What should we be doing by now as the borders are closed and hoping that when we open up, we'll be competitive?
Yeah, I think this is a typical question of consumer behavior. But then in the end, there's economic aspects that we can touch on. Now, Ghana, we keep on, signing trade agreements, trade, integrations here and there that we've been drumming on. My position has been clear on this. The goods that we try to export, have we tested the local market to see, the consumption level? Have we saturated the local market? The basic economics, it tells you that, before you think about going beyond borders, I mean, apart from, the dollar, benefits that we get, we should be able to, test, the local market. Now, COVID has brought itself. I mean, COVID has given us that opportunity. I mean, to make sure that the things that we produce in this country, we test them in-house. Now, this, what do you call it, hand sanitizer and all those that, within the COVID, you see how we can think fast during, stressful times. It has brought up new innovations. It has brought up different products. Even some of them, you could see they are not, that good on the market. I mean, when you smear them on your hands as if you've smeared some banku on your hand. But then in the end, they are all, a way of preparing us to make sure that we have local consumption packaged to the taste of, the local consumers. And then in the end, over time, once we get our market saturated, obviously we have a, possibility of looking beyond borders. Now, if you produce and the goods are not accepted locally, sometimes selling it internationally, becomes difficult. You have to use the local front to test the market very well, to test the response on the goods before you send them, possibly outside. So for me, COVID, with the borders closed, is an opportunity. It's an opportunity because you cannot easily export. You cannot easily import. So let's produce, in our market, and in the end, test the goods in our market. And with time, as we build up and the borders gets open again, these goods will be ready for export. So it is an opportunity that has availed itself. We shouldn't look at COVID as if, it's something that has come to, create, stress on us. In every, natural disaster, there is an opportunity. Now, I can also tell you that in as much as on the budget we are thinking about expenditure, there are some gains that we've made during this COVID. At least government officials are not traveling so much. So some allowances and per diems and all those things, which I expect the finance minister to give accounts of all those things before he even requests for extra funds going second half of the year. So for me, there are some positives in here which we need to take advantage of.
But if we have to speak to the volumes of trade, it also means that by March, we're told that because the CD, we didn't have a lot of the flights, we had even trickled by April to about 5.1, 5.2 by way of its performance against the US dollar. Now we're back to 5.6. It's also because there was a certain leeway we needed to do the imports. How do we balance that, as we know that we're within this period, but ultimately we'll open up?
Okay. So,
because it speaks to a trade deficit that we've always been having that we've not been able to overcome.
Yes.
Or close.
Yes. And I think, as you rightly said, these are the what do you call the short-term effects of what we have. But if you look at the long term, and I think if you look at what actually drives our forest deterioration, we could see that our importation of food and other items, which more or less tend to affect our forest. One of the good things that we are seeing is that now with COVID and our borders being closed, we are now sourcing more items from Ghana. That means that things that we don't need to import, we can now use local substitutes, which I'm happy people are using. Now, even look at just before the COVID, we're talking about local rice being consumed. Now, it was a craze. everybody was consuming local rice. Now the belief in the Ghanaian products is increasing. That is where now we need leadership. When I say leadership, I'm not talking about political leadership. I'm talking about leadership as we as Ghanaians. How do we see that we take this opportunity to say, okay, these are the areas that we have to use our local resources. And I can trust me that if we do more of using local resources, then which has become the underlying issue for these forest issues, these issues will be addressed. Recently, we are trying to look at local car production and all those things. These are discussions that we can talk about down the road. But these are all areas that we need to look at to make sure that the underlying consumption of foreign goods are actually curtailed. And I think this is where I always say leadership always comes in.
Well, we have some notable information we've put together. We want to just run that by you. You get to find some of the variables, the statistics that perhaps you can't play in your mind to get to know. For example, the performance of our GDP by the time third quarter it was, based on what the report the finance ministry had, overall GDP was 6.2, and then the real by June was the time that we had it, based on the statement that we picked or sourced this from 5.2. End period inflation as at the third quarter 2019 was 7.6. It's since been revised, and overall budget deficit on cash basis percentage of GDP was some 4.5. So we've been able to go through this. We had a net import cover at the time of 4, but we also know that by the close of 2019, entering 2020 was around the period 3 months. So we can come to terms with the reality. The medium-term macroeconomic target, we all do know, they're vastly affected by the banking crisis, which also swelled our debt levels, the public debt level. Overall GDP to grow at 5.7, and you can find also that the primary balance to be in surplus, and the 3.5 months cover also there from 2020 to 2023. It looks like, Mr. Barton, we're still within the reach of, especially the import covers and some of the things that we need to achieve. And if we go through, you also get to find out what the projections were in the short to medium term. And it was just basically to make sure we restore the economy, transform agriculture. And indeed, from 2017, by the post-record 2017, 2018, agriculture had shot up, and then industry had also done very well. And you could also have the finance ministry wanting to revamp the economy and social infrastructure. Dr. Lord Mensah, 2020, we're told, year of infrastructure, year of roads. Just yesterday, the president was in Koforidua. We have a 70 million euro new Eastern Regional Hospital. And you said capital expenditure, we can't touch it. It's an election year. How do we need to create the balance within COVID?
Yeah, I gave you the signal earlier on my submission, looking at the items on the expenditure side, and possibly, dealing with some of them in a way that will support, COVID budget. In fact, I always say that we should be conserved as much as we can at this time. If you look on the budget side, I indicated that, the expenditure side of the budget, I indicated that we have 2 items which for me are non-earmark items. And these items, if they go off, the budget or possibly reduce, will go a long way to support, the country. I'm looking at the other expenditure, which is more or less miscellaneous. In Japan, they don't do budget with other expenditure without earmarking an activity for it. If you look at what we call it, the grant to state-owned institutions, these are funds that we can easily reduce, because if you look at the happenings in COVID, most of the administrative activities are the ministries are not going on as a result of social distancing. Printing and all those things are being minimized. A lot of communications are being done electronically. So these are possible gains we can make as a country. And so if you look on that side, I would tell you that the budget is not as scary as we want it if we want to be conserved and want to really balance it so that the little that we raise in our environment can easily finance the possible projects that we intend to do as a country.
Mr. Asare, I'm told that you're back. Okay.
Yes, please.
Great. And looking at what the state of capital expenditure has been in election years in the Fourth Republic, it also means that we're expecting it to go up the roofs or the rafters, as the British would say. But COVID has given us, well, some mild expectations. Do you think, based on your observations as somebody who works with your firm, the KPMG, the market, and I'm sure inherent in the market is the demographic or the population of voters, do they think they will be forgiving of the managers of the economy if by November we say that, well, we've been able to incur so much debt, and as a result of that, the deficit has gone up, we've exceeded the 5% threshold, which already looks like what the indications will be? Is that our laxity? Do they have the reception, the forgiveness, the sympathy for us, for the managers of the economy for this?
Thank you so much. I think nobody really asked for this pandemic. It is a natural disaster that we are all managing. And so we cannot say that any government could have reasonably anticipated that this is going to hit us. And so there's no way you could plan for an event like this that we are experiencing. So, I mean, to a large extent, one can say that the government had very ambitious plans for infrastructure development, the year of roads. Aside domestic sources of revenue, we're looking towards, China through the, Sino-Hydro facility to support our infrastructural development. And we know China has been hit hard. So, of course, we're going to have challenges, from that side as well. Would you forgive the government? Well, it is a very difficult question to answer at this stage. But if we really take a step back and then we ask ourselves that if any of us were in that position, I mean, what could we have done better, as we see it now? We first need to save lives. That was the most important thing. And I think it was made abundantly clear that we can work on the livelihoods later, but we need first to have the people to be alive.
Looks like we've lost Mr. And is the market receptive enough for this?
Yes, I think at this stage, really, it is really being able to package projects that are attractive. For me, I don't think it is government's responsibility alone to drive our infrastructure projects. I think we must look towards private capital, be it public-private partnership, because we have not yet developed that aspect of our infrastructure development, leveraging private capital through this PPP. We've been talking about it for a number of years now.
Mr. Asare, what do you mean? That PPP will mean that they should partner the state or government, construct roads, and then they toll it, like they did in the UK, etc. Is that what you're saying?
No, I mean, it's an example, but we need to look at our infrastructural, needs. We have, rails that we need to build. We have, roads we need to build. It is not every road that you can toll. I mean, government can come in with some kind of viability, gap analysis to decide that, okay, for this road, it is not possible to commercialize it in sense of tolling it to generate revenue. But what can I do in terms of providing subsidy to make it attractive for a private, firm or a private partner to be able to come into the infrastructure development? Government cannot do it alone. Trust you me. Government can have the fantastic ideas about infrastructure, about roads, about rails, about airports, about ports. If you look at our ports, it is not all 100% government financed. We are leveraging, private capital. And then based on that, we also leverage some commercial lending to be able to support our infrastructure development. And so for me, it is important we look at private capital and we create the enabling environment, then, conditions locally to be able to attract this capital into our country. Remember, the World Bank is estimating that foreign direct investment is going to drop between 30 to 40%. And if that is true, and it's going to hit us very hard, then we need to find ways to make our economy attractive. How are we packaging the infrastructure projects that we have so that it makes it very viable? And if it is not viable, we put conditions in place to make it attractive for capital to flow into the country. And that is what we need to be thinking about. So in a recovery process or in the road to recovery, we need to to have a rethink about how we are financing infrastructure. If you look at our budget, capital expenditure is about $9–10 billion compared to interest payments of over $20-something billion. It is a very massive, difference. Can you imagine if we're using our interest payments to support infrastructure development? That is $20 billion, which is about almost $3.54 billion going into infrastructure. If we're using $20 billion to build our roads, our rails, I bet you in the next 10 years, we'll be able to bridge that infrastructure gap that we currently have.
I love your thinking. And MPS, for example, that new port there is an ideal PPP situation that we can cite. Great testimony or case in point. But look, we want to expand this conversation. And for the next about 20 minutes, we'll be talking jobs. We're talking about effect on industry, etc. And Mr. Solomon Kote is the General Secretary. The Industrial and Commercial Workers Union is joining us. I see you. And Mr. Kote, thank you for joining us. Please unmute.
Good morning.
Great.
You're a panelist.
Great. I love your sitting position. You're joining us for 20 more minutes. So try and hold on, okay? Great. But from where you sit, I see you. You are the mother union of industrial workers. How many job losses have you recorded so far?
So far, we can talk in the range of less than 1,000. Less than 1,000 because most of the employers as of now are really struggling to put every employee on hold. The mass job losses are coming from the casual workers. And because we don't have data on them, we are unable to give figures. But those directly with the ICU, we can confidently say over 1,000. And they are coming from the hospitality center. This is where we've lost most of the workers.
Hospitality.
Yes, we mean the hotels, and then the restaurants and the caterings.
Just on the practical way of asking the questions, we all have friends. Some work in banks, some work, etc. We also do know that some are supposed to work from home. Some have been asked to take half salaries, quarter salaries, or some cutoffs. Do you have a record of how many as well have been affected by that?
Yes. What it takes is that if you take the entire hospitality center, no one is receiving 100% salary. What, in fact, the employers have done is that they are keeping hope against hope that by September, October, maybe we will get into the normal situation and then resume work. As of now, all those hotels over there, about 23 of them, they are paying 50% or half of the salaries that these workers were having before. So in that region, we can talk about 7,000 workers in that particular half salary situation. And then there are others also where the employers realize that they can't continue with this new normal. Hence, they have closed down entirely, like URS Catering and they have been done the redundancy, pay everybody off, and they are looking at it. Meanwhile, other companies are also looking at similar, closures because the closure of the borders is leaving the market situation only to the internal, and the internal market is also not enough to keep their businesses running. But all of them, we say kudos to them. They are looking at what can we all do to support each other, and that is where we find ourselves. And to the last bit of your statement, most of the workers are also working from home, and then maybe 2 days you are off, you come, 1 week you are off, you come. This is also affecting the kind of productivity that the employers want to have. And hence, we are all terrified that by October, if this thing don't get stabilized, we don't know how the real negative impact of COVID-19 will have on the employment role in Ghana.
And with my little knowledge in economics, I do know that productivity has a great relation to output, negative or positive.
Yes.
Now, that will mean that by that September that you are in contact with the employers, they would make some drastic decisions. Based on your own analysis, what have you envisaged? Or do you envisage will be the decisions that employers may have to take by the next quarter?
Well, much as we want to look very positive and trust that things will work well, from what we are seeing, sales is not too encouraging. From what we are seeing, even unions have decided not to even negotiate in this year to ask for any demands at all. And yet the employers are really finding it difficult to survive this particular third quarter that we are entering. Hence, if by the October, as we have looked at our books and we have looked at the situation with all other sectors of the economy, we might be facing some serious redundancy challenges.
I'm asking you this because, just go to halftime. I'm coming. Let me ask my analyst in the studio. So, Mr. Boateng, this thing you've heard, you envisage this because you were foraging the market, right? You're scouting, looking for pieces of information here and there. One thing we do have is that there's no available data. So we have about 1,000 affected directly, okay? 7,000 who are taking cutbacks in wages or salaries or whatever it is that you want to call them. Then there are those who come in, that's for them, they go 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, casual. So it's affected or influenced by the labor law.
Exactly.
What does this tell you?
So what this tells you is what now can be done to salvage the situation, because that is when we look at most of the stimulus packages which are likely to roll out to certain industries.
But the stimulus is not supposed to be used to be paying salaries.
Well, let's take a step back. Let's look at the backdrop of where we are now. If you look at what happened in the U.S. during the 2008, when they're having the mortgage crisis, you hear the economists or the president of the United States saying that let's spend, you need to spend to take the economy out of recession. And I think that is where we are now. We need to spend to take the economy from where we are.
Consumer spending.
Exactly. Let's not look at deficit, the typical macro issues that we are known. And that is where you are likely to see, taxes not being, using rebates and reliefs to give more people disposable income to spend. Then let's assume that now you give a company who is having 7,000 of its employees half salary, on a half salary basis. Now they have a stimulus package and they are able to be able to keep all these employees in place. The government is going to get the taxes. The company is likely to be profitable. It will pay its taxes. These employees who are now going to have their full salary will spend. There will be VAT being generated. So these are the key elements or the multiplier effect of some of these decisions that whenever we are looking at, we have to look at them from a broader perspective. Because whenever we are in that situation, you need to spend, or we need to have more policy that will stimulate the economy. So that is how I see
you envisage it as well. Dr. Lord Mensah, what you've heard from Mr. Kote, what does it tell you? Dr. Lord Mensah? He's gone for a cup of tea.
It gives me the signal.
Okay.
I've heard a lot from him, and I can conclude that. You see, if you look at our hospitality industry, which a lot of the job losses are in that, domain, I would say that, it's the packaging. You see, most of these hospitality industries are packaged to attract, foreign patronage. I think, they need to have a balance of, if you have 1,000 rooms, a typical example, and 500 is for your local patronage, and then the other 500, which is, giving it the ambience to attract, foreign patronage. I think at this time, they would have been, somehow, some way in business. Now you have a hospitality industry which is operating, and everything you see in there is more or less for foreigners. Now that borders are closed, they're facing a problem. And as a result of that, they had to lay off, people. I always say COVID-19 has come to, give us a big lesson, a lesson that we should learn how to package our businesses. I understand the capital investment for most of these, businesses are from outside. So therefore, they need to generate, dollars to meet up with the input to the business. But then we should also learn that the business is operating in a certain environment, an environment where, when borders are closed, you may never have, patronage. And that is exactly what is happening now. I foresee some of them that they don't need to completely come at a halt. They need to repackage. For now, if you have 1,000 rooms, all that you have to do is possibly convert maybe 300 of them for local patronage. And I think, the local market is still, functioning. Some way, somehow, even though you might not get it as expected. So for me, it has to do with packaging. And going forward, we have to learn from this so that when we are faced with situations where we're not getting the target market, we can, restructure to meet up with the alternatives. So I think that is what I have learned.
Mr. Sari, just about 3 weeks ago, I went to sleep at Sky Plus Hotel. It's a 2-star hotel, I believe, in the Volta Regional Capital of Ho. And they gave me a discount. And I asked, is it a discount because I'm Roland on TV? And they said, oh, no, it's a discount because of the period. Is that something like that you think should be? We need to diversify or do the tweaking of the business model now?
Absolutely. The hotel industry thrives on occupancy. So the more you have people come through, your facility, that is when you are able to drive your business. So whatever marketing strategies that they need to now start thinking about to get, visitors to come through the rooms, because that is really what would drive the demand for food and beverage. That's what we're going to drive it. Because now conferences are on hold. So you cannot bet on conferences, international conferences, where you would have a lot of, foreigners coming through. So what you now want to be looking at are, domestic tourism. So if you're probably traveling to the Volta region for leisure, then you might want to spend some time in a hotel. And the only way to attract, people to come through is to look at the rack rates that they are charging. Sometimes you see the rates and you're asking yourself, as an ordinary, even middle income person, would you be able to afford some of these rates to go and sleep in some of these hotels? So they now start, now that you are cutting even down costs, maybe staff cost is coming down, you are not operating all the rooms. So we give an example. So some rooms need to be shut because there's no way you can be cleaning all the rooms because they are not going to be occupied anyways. So you are cutting down costs on certain areas. So you need to look at your pricing too. What can I do to be able to make some of these rates attractive to domestic clients? Because now you're not having the foreign clients to be able to bank your hopes on, when you can even do some kind of a cross subsidization where you charge less for domestic tourists and then you charge a higher for those that are coming from outside. So these are ways that hotel industry may need to start evolving to be able to go through this pandemic. There are some of them within the value chain, the tourism value chain, that are definitely going to go under. The airlines, some of them are going under. If they're not going to get any bailouts, then they are going to find it difficult to be able to come back. But if you have made capital investment into a hotel building now, and these are purpose-built structures, you cannot overnight convert it to, say, an office block. It is not possible. So you now start thinking about, how do I utilize the facilities that I have to be able to generate some income that will keep my company afloat? For now, it is not the question of being able to make profit. It is being able to keep your employees, to be able to maintain them at a certain level, keep your operations going at a certain minimum level until things turn around, and then you can start racking up things as you expect it to be. So this will be my thinking as to how the hotel industry can start planning for some kind of a recovery through the difficult challenges that we are going through now.
Yeah, I know, right? And you said for so-called middle class in Ghana, even affording some of the rates, sometimes you keep on. I think only except those who work for the tax auditing firms, like KPMG, they can afford every weekend. but that's just on the side. And look, we have other people. We have financial analysts, we have the tax experts, we have the auditors, we have the economists, and then we have even the trade unionists who look after the workers and their welfare right here, helping us do some great discussions. And I tell you, that's why we have to take a break, because as we take the break, make sure you go scouting our social media platforms. We have Facebook, Joy News on TV. We do have a Twitter handle at Joy News on TV. We also do have our YouTube channel, which is streaming this live, Joy News TV on YouTube live, and then myjohnline.com will give you all the updates. It's the Finance Minister, Ken Oforiatta, in the Chamber of Parliament, our own legislature, to brief us on how far we've come, 2 quarters of 2020, and how coronavirus has hit us hard, but looking forward as we make entry into the 3rd quarter, the 4th quarter, what will the outlook of the economy be like? We'll take a break, but not before this. The Ghana National Association of Teachers, NAT, is launching its NAT standpoint on education as its contribution to the quest for quality public education delivery in Ghana. Make sure you're part of NAT's drive at empowering teachers and learners for the greater good of our country, Ghana. This event is taking place at the Teachers Hall today, the 23rd of July 2020 from 11 a.m. And the guest of honor is the Reverend Professor Emmanuel Ladobin. He is President, Presbyterian University College of Ghana, and the reviewer is Professor Dominic Mensah of the University of Education, Winneba, and attendance is strictly by invitation. Social distancing protocols being maintained right here. Not development starts with people and their education. But look, they will be using a number of items, sanitizers, etc. One institution or firm that produces this is Golden Finger Industries Limited. They are a fast-growing manufacturing company processing fruit into quality organic cosmetic products, cleaning and disinfectant, and these are all produced right here in Ghana under certified FDA conditions. They have in stock the GF hand sanitizer, the GF rubbing alcohol, and antiseptic GF Jetol, the GF multipurpose liquid soap, GF hand washing soap, GF antiseptic cleaner, the GF multipurpose glass cleaner, and they are located at the Giselle Estate, SCC DVLA on the Wager Road. Make sure you hit them. They have some good phone lines, always reliable, 054-6274-070, 054-6273-990, and their landline is always reliable. And it is 0302-957950. We're taking a break. When we come back, greater analysis. What has been revealed by Mr. Solomon Kote, who heads the ICU, about workers, 7,000 now home, receiving half or partial salaries, and then 1,000 who have lost their jobs at all, and the casual ones that they can't even account for. What does it mean to you? After the break, all this analysis. Revealing, yeah. 7,000 jobs, and these are workers who are receiving half pay, at least that the ICU has record of. 7,000 workers receiving cuts in their salaries. 1,000 lost jobs, and then the casual workers, we can't even account for them. Now, Mr. Kote, as head of that union, when did you start feeling the heat? When this whole inception of corona was being recorded? Mr. Kote?
Directly. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Yes. You know, if you look at the nature of our union, we cover a large, spectrum of the entire economy. So the hospitality center, which is one of our major flagships, it happened that the moment the planes were not coming, our hotels became a graveyard. And again, we sought to see what really can be done. Then we noticed that no work, no pay syndrome started coming. And as I talk to you now, a lot of things have been frozen for them. We've spoken to the hospitality sector minister, where now some levies that they pay have all been frozen out. We have also ensured that these workers were not just thrown out, but some engagement have continued to see maybe the fortunes can change in no time. But as it stands now, our budget have been affected, our membership have been affected, and it's like everybody in the labor sector who runs around this group have equally also been hit up. Now, looking ahead, if we take the banking and the financial sector, activities there have also slowed down. So obviously, there also, if this October waiting time that we have is anything to go by, then another hit is going to come on us again. You agree with me also that the agri sector, where we also find ourselves, so far we have been blessed. No corona has hit there, so they have been working, and therefore life look a bit normal there. But the spikes we are seeing from the corona, if some should also hit along those sides, and I can tell you the negative effect is going to become very strong. But however, when we take our pharmaceutical sector, where ICU is very predominant, they have taken advantage. They have now done some innovation. They've come up with these hand sanitizers. They've come up with these nose masks, things that they were not doing before. But what is the market that this thing can provide to give them the volumes that can actually keep them running? All these ones are issues that is facing us as labor. But I'm sure we are not alone. It is the entire world, it's the entire economy that is actually facing it. So we will still continue to engage with employers to see the best alternative to be applied in the circumstances that we find ourselves.
Dr. Lord Mensah, the projections on job cuts would also mean that we need to revise.
We are not.
Dr. Lord Mensah.
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. If you look at the projections that Mr. Solomon Kote talks about, it would also mean that we need to revise our projections on domestic expenditure, because that will ultimately be affected.
Oh yes, I mean at this time it's about revision. I mean, you realize that whatever is being transpired on the job market will definitely feed into government revenue. And so if you don't have the necessary revenue, then obviously you should be able to cut down your expenditure. And then also at the individual, households, I mean, we should understand that we don't live in we don't have the normalcy that we had earlier. And so if you live on maybe 3 milks a day, it's about time you revise your home consumption. So obviously we should understand it's a new dimension altogether. If you have lost your job, you should be tempted to reduce some of your expenditure that you used to have when you were on the job market. We don't have that vibrant, kind of economy where people can insure against, these unforeseen circumstances on their incomes. In other parts of the world, when we have situations like this, that individuals have lost, streams of their income, the insurance takes over if they have insurance for that purpose. But we don't have. So possibly, Mr. Kote, I think you might look in that direction.
Okay.
Looking at the possibility of insuring, people's income in case of unforeseen circumstances, like this, so that the insurance, takes over, when it comes to emergencies like this. So for me, I think we need to rebuild the market, and that's why I said earlier that we live in times that is providing a lot of lessons, and going forward, this would deepen our way of thinking in how we structure the economy, even to the extent of the insurance market and the packages that goes with it. Now we have income insurance, which I think some of the insurance companies can
start doing. Okay. All right.
times like this.
I didn't know that you had insured your income, but I know one person who hasn't, Joseph Opoku Gakpo, he hasn't. But he is speaking to Kwame Agboja. He's a member of parliament for Adaklu, but also a ranking on Parliament's Committee on Roads and Transport. We go live there just to get this great feed.
So, Roland, welcome to Parliament. The MPs are getting in very slowly, one after the other, even as the House prepares to host the Minister for Finance, Ken Ofori-Atta. Sitting is supposed to begin at 10 a.m. I can tell you for certain that there's been a lot of rearrangements when it comes to the seating here in Parliament. A lot of the seats have been taken out so that then there is adequate spacing around. There's a lot of restriction as well on who is getting in. And you recall, as the Speaker rightly made the point yesterday, for the MPs who will be present, it's on first-come, first-served basis. If you get in on time, then you'd be able to grab a seat in there. Otherwise, you either have to watch on TV or probably sit in the public gallery. Well, one individual who is right here on time, as he makes the effort to be able to get a space in the chamber, is, as you indicated, Kwame Agboja, who is the ranking member on Parliament Road and Transport Committee. And he's also the MP for Adaklu. We would have a conversation about the declaration of this year being Year of Roads and his expectations with regards to that, particularly as Ken Ofori-Atta delivers the mid-year budget review in the next hour or so. But broadly, what's your general expectation of how things will pan out, even as the Finance Minister speaks to Parliament today?
Good morning, Joseph, and good morning to your colleagues at the studio and your viewers across the world. First of all, yes, it's constitutional that the Finance Minister comes to the House to provide details of expenditure so far, halfway down the year. So he's not doing anything different from that. What's my expectation? Well, he's got a style. He'll probably come and read few Bible quotations, which he doesn't even believe in himself, talk about his birth, if possible, which he does all the time, but fail to address the issues that matter to the people of this country. That, for instance, the country, Parliament gave the minister 1.2 billion Ghana cedi out of the stabilization fund. IMF World Bank gave them $1 billion, working out to be about 6 billion Ghana cedi. We are told the Bank of Ghana said they will bail them out for another 10 billion. In effect, this finance minister would have 17.2 billion Ghana cedi in the shortest possible time, in less than 2 months. No government has ever had that. We are not even talking about the borrowings that he's done prior to that and the ones we are going to do, including today and others.
But these are not normal times, right? So those kinds of borrowings are virtually justified to a very large extent, aren't they?
Not at all. When you are given 17.2 billion Ghana cedi, and what did you do with it? And first of all, you remember when they came to the House, they failed to tell us what they were going to do with it. When we asked them, they only talked about they were going to pay some electricity bill and water bill and also feed people who were in the lockdown area for 3 months. We know the lockdown wasn't even 1 month. 2, we know that, for instance, they said they were going to pay some frontline workers. As of 2 weeks ago, when the Deputy Finance Minister was in the House, and I asked a simple question, what was your definition of a frontline worker? As of the time you made a promise, he couldn't, the Speaker ruled me out. And we are told that this week they are paying part of that money. But this money was set aside.
Well, the Deputy Health Minister has defined that. 6,000 of them have been identified, people who are working directly on tested and positively confirmed COVID-19 cases. And they've paid that of the month of April already. Dr. Koboy told us that just about 3 days ago here in Parliament.
Yes. I'm saying that when the finance minister was here to answer a question about that, he couldn't answer the question. Dr. Okoboy only provided some answers last week. And I'm saying that they said they were going to pay right from, look, there's some nurses and doctors who have passed on who will never know this money has been paid. Is that not the case? Because the time they said they will pay this money, they didn't pay. That is the point I'm trying to make. So if you take the commitment they made in terms of what they told Ghana they were going to use the 17.2 billion for, it's a fraction of what they actually are using the money for. And I'm saying that when you put all this, if you aggregate all these things, it is difficult to comprehend how, for instance, I am sure everybody in this country, including Joy Multimedia, the way this finance minister has managed the economy affects you. We've heard of redundancies even in the media. If this economy was buoyant enough, multimedia should be buoyant. The buoyancy of the economy is seen in the number of people gainfully employed. Today, there are drivers struggling. Why? Because Dr. Baumia and the government decided to increase the taxes on petroleum product. Let me explain.
not because the price of petroleum products have increased on the world market, but because he wanted to take the monies he's claiming to give us and for water and electricity, he wanted to take it from the back door. He increased it. 2, because of the bad nature of which he's been managing the economy, which even happened before COVID, the cedi is taking a battering from the international trading currencies. Because of that, a driver needed to pay more to get spare parts today. Because of COVID, a driver can't take a full load in his vehicle because of social distancing. I can't blame government for that. We all need to do that to feel safe. But there are 3 major attacks on a driver today that makes his business not worth doing. But guess what? Instead of supporting the drivers with part of the 17.2 billion, you were in this house when we decided to give part of, for instance, monies to support people who shouldn't be supported. I give you an example. Today they are scheming to sell Ghana Airport, Terminal 3 and others. I'm happy that your media, some of your colleagues have been doing very detailed work, and I commend you for that. Why do I say this? Terminal 3 was built at $250 million. Part of that money that we used to build it came from the, infrastructure fund. Yeah, there was money in that fund to continue paying them. But guess what? This house decided to give that money to the relative of the president to build Pullman Hotel.
Which you think is out of place. So just to get back to the very basics, you expect the finance minister to address basic bread and butter issues in terms of what is being done for the ordinary driver, for the ordinary taxi driver, for the everyday person, for the healthcare worker, and then for the media. Yes. We know that 600 million Ghana cedis went into a stimulus package, which was aimed at helping small-scale businesses and all. So your expectation is that what? An additional package possibly be announced today, targeting those who have been benefited from
600 million. Do you know how many, can you point to 1, 2, 3 businesses that have benefited from that so far? Do you have any evidence of those who have benefited from the 600 million?
Do you know them?
Yes, some of them we are told in Madaklu. We are told that some people are being given 2,000 cedis as a business to support their businesses. We would find out whether those people actually own businesses. We will give any support to business. In this house, the minority leader, when they came for that, the 600 million, we asked for details for who will benefit. If we were to be given the opportunity as a minority spokesperson on road and transport, I would have demanded that a driver who is an essential service provider is cushioned out of that. The trotro driver from Adenta to Tema Station, who says he's not an essential service provider? If those trotro taxis stop working today, perhaps there are people in parliament who wouldn't come to work. So we would have demanded those happen. But guess what? They decided to lump and skew those resources to other people which will go into details. I'm saying that the summary is that the finance minister will come and do the usual thing, do the praise singing, be pious, and never address the issue of when the driver will get some relief, when the people who have lost their job as a result of the bungled and targeted collapse of the banks, where today Dr. Ndum, an indigenous banker, Dr. Dufour, who built banks in this country, make profit, who can actually employ people, are watching you and I on telly instead of being in their banks, creating jobs and other things, simply because the president and his family want to create a system where the state is captured in every sector for them alone. Today, I am sure maybe Enterprise will be the only insurance company that will make real profit. What about other insurance companies? Those are the things that Ghanaians want answers to. And he's never going to be able to talk about those things in the chamber.
Let's round up on the bit about year of roads. We are halfway through that year of roads. You are ranking on the Roads and Transport Committee. Has anything changed over the last 6-7 months? Any major expectations, even as the minister presents the figures on those and what the plans are for the year of roads going into the end of the year?
First of all, thank you very much. I can tell you for a fact that Ghana's roads have never been this bad in generations. Why? Because the government made a policy when they came into government in 2017 to suspend almost all road projects, claiming they were doing auditing. Out of that, Cocoa Road particularly suffered. The president was in this house during one of his State of the Nation address and boasted that he supported that move. I am urging multimedia, go and fish out the report of the audit on the Cocoa roads. They told you some of the road didn't exist, some of the contracts were inflated. Multimedia is a powerful organization. Why are you not able to get us the report of the Cocoa Road audit report? Because the government lied. And I'm telling you, be bold. Go to the Cocoa Road Board Chief Executive and demand that. Secondly, the government failed to put in the necessary investment into the road sector right from 2017. they only began to show interest in that from 2018, end of 2018. And indeed, they've come to this house to take some loans and to do like asphaltic overlay in Kumasi and Accra. But Joseph, under the NDC, asphaltic overlay was happening in every regional capital, even some district capital. So it is very mediocre to tout asphaltic overlay in Accra and Kumasi alone as an achievement. I hear them talk about President Akufo-Addo is building 5 interchanges. Which one? The only interchange that can be attributed to President Akufo-Addo is the Tamale interchange. In fact, the site of that project is a breeding ground for rodents as we speak. There's nothing going on. Is Akufo-Addo taking credit for Tema interchange? No. Obechebi? No. How do you call it? Ofanko? None of those projects. So Akufo-Addo has totally failed. Even this week, we may approve some loans for road projects in the country. But we are talking about 4 years. Why do you have to wait until this time to be able to do road? So in terms of road, they have totally failed, and government would have to change for the NDC to be able to do real delivery on road projects, as we've seen prior to 2017.
And for you, the last 6 months of the year will make absolutely no difference
in fact,
terms
some
of
of
how
the loans, as you know, you are experienced in this house. Some of the loans we are approving or we have approved, we will never see a contractor on site before the election. Why? Because it takes time after having Parliament approve for the processes before even the contractor turns up on site. So you will see them do a heightened sword cutting, but you will never see anything. But who said you should have done it now? You should have done it right from 2017, allow the Cocoa Road to be completed, then you can add on to them. If you are now completing Cocoa Road that was started in 2015, you have actually failed the people of this country.
Many thanks for joining us. Looks like the heat is on already, even as we await the presence of the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, in the House. That's Kwame Agboja, who is the ranking member on Parliament Road and Transport Committee, with those thoughts ahead of the delivery of the mid-year budget review statement by the Minister of Finance, Ken Ofori-Atta. A number of issues we expect he'll be addressing will include the issues having to do with the debt stock, for example, and what government is doing in order to keep it under very good levels, even going into the 2020 elections, and even in the light of the fact that there has been a lot of borrowing to help deal with challenges having to do with COVID-19. And so in the next 40 minutes or so, we're expecting Mr. Ken Ofori-Atta in the House, even as the proceedings begin, for him to present the media budget review. Roland.
I'm told that the sitting has been regulated. You reported that apparently you will be sitting outside. You'll be watching from your TV set or your phone. What is the outline?
Well, a number of the media folks are being allowed in. It's been capped at 25. So some of we, the media folks, will be in the press gallery to monitor proceedings and get things out there. It's not just them. When it comes to the MPs who will be present in the chamber itself, the arrangement is said that there will be a space, more like an empty space that should have been a seat in between everywhere that you would have a member of parliament sitting. So the chamber that's supposed to take up to 275 people may well be taking less than half of that number, less than 135. So that's actually going to be the situation as well. And what the Speaker of Parliament is encouraging is that for the MPs who may end up arriving a little late and wouldn't get space in the chamber, they would have to get into the offices and watch proceedings right from their offices as part of measures to adequately enforce social distancing to avoid the spread of COVID-19. And there's been heavy enforcement of those provisions, even as people get into the chamber. Members of the public are not being allowed in. You would recall that usually when a mid-year budget review, a budget statement is being done, members of the diplomatic corps would usually show up here in Parliament, as well as people from various civil society organizations and farmer groups and business organizations and all. That is not happening today as part of efforts to limit the numbers. And the public gallery is being reserved, possibly for MPs who may not find space right on the floor of the House itself. And so that is really being enforced very vigorously, and we're waiting to see how things will unfold, even as the finance minister prepares to come to the House. He hasn't arrived in the House yet from my checks. We're expecting that proceedings will begin from 10 o'clock, although sometimes things do delay a bit. And there are other issues on the agenda of the House, including a number of loan agreements that the finance minister will be dealing with even before he begins the presentation of the mid-year budget review. And so this is expected to span for like an hour and a half or maybe a little longer. When that is done, the House will adjourn sitting to tomorrow. And then from next week, Monday, we're expecting that the House will engage in a full-blown debate on the issues that Mr. Kenneth Ofori-Atta will lay out today, picking on it sector by sector. So they'll begin with the finance sector, get onto the road sector, get onto the agricultural sector, and all the other sectors in a debate that will span for like a week right on the floor, which will unfold sometime next week, after which Parliament will then give approval for whatever review of estimates that the finance minister will bring, and possibly any other expected revenue expenditure approval that he will lay before the House, even as he delivers the mid-year budget review statement.
Mr. Agboja said you're one well-informed, experienced member of the press corps. So it means you are part of the 25, aren't you, Joseph?
Yes, I happen to be one of the 25 who will be right there in the monitoring proceedings, right, even as things unfold. And so the entire Joy Business team is here as well, who would also be helping bring us the various updates.
That's Jog. He's Joseph Opoku-Gakpo. He is one of the privileged few among the media elites covering today's media budget in Parliament. But a last question.
That's not how the speaker said. It's not about people within the media elites being allowed into the space. It's just the selection of a handful. So it's just by divine selection that we'll find ourselves in there.
Yeah, the quintessential Joseph Opoku-Gakpo. Which do you attend? Because the way I say divine, because if somebody is some practicing traditional person, then what do? That's the supreme being, the divine supreme being. Okay, Joseph, we'll come back to you, okay? That's the most important thing we want to hear. And you can get all these updates. We have Facebook, Joy News on TV. We have a Twitter handle, Joy News on TV. We're streaming this live, Joy News TV on YouTube. myjoyonline.com is available. Get all the updates. Watch this as well. And the discussions are ongoing.